welcome back to the channel. If you're new to this channel, my name is Venus Chenko. I'm a counseling psychologist, mediator, and life coach. It is indeed a pleasure to be back. Thank you so much for your positive comments about the previous uploaded videos. I really appreciate. And even as you listen on and you have questions or you want me to talk about something, please feel free to share. We will also share my number on the screen as towards the end. You can always contact me. I love the fact that now we are not limited geographically. I mean, social media has opened up this space. We become a global village. So welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about human sexuality and its link to depression. Did you know that sex can cause depression? Oh yes, oh yes. And today I would really like to address this, and my target audience for today is anyone who is married in a relationship. If you're single, and I will underline single and looking forward to settling, guys, I always say this, I always emphasize that you should do things at the right time. Personally, that's what I believe. Sometimes we get involved in things prematurely and we end up paying, the price for this. When it comes to human sexuality, I believe that God has an appointed time and it is a process. Why should we jump? Why would you expect yourself to perform, if I could put it like that way, things, when you're not ready? There's a way your body is also tailor-made to be able to do this at a particular time. So if you're single and you are looking forward to settling in a marriage, or if you're in a relationship and you're already involved, you're already in the process, then this might really benefit for you. And at the end of the day, I really hope that you'll be able to understand what the Bible says about human sexuality. I'll be talking more about that, and what the psychological theories that are out there, what they say about human sexuality. Basically, it's just to make you understand the human growth and developmental curve when it comes to the physical aspects, and what happens in your mind as you grow, when it comes to human sexuality. And definitely towards the end, I'll be talking about interventions, to this depression that is caused by human sexuality. Allow me to start with a quote as it is. I'll be referring to my notes, so when you see me looking aside, please note I am not a genius. I need to refer, so I will be referring more often to my notes. But allow me to just open up with a quote from someone called Henry David Thoreau. He says, "Every man is a builder of a temple called his body." Every man is a builder of a temple called his body. Did you know that your body is actually a temple? It is for you to decide how clean your temple is. I feel that most of the time we allow people into our space, people we have not really connected, and they end up defiling our temple. All right. Now, allow me now to start from the spiritual perspective. For those of you who have been watching my videos, I'm so big on spiritual. And like I always put it, spiritual affects psychological, which in turn affects our behavior, what we see manifesting, as behavior physically. And that is just the mere truth. Everything has an influence from the spiritual space down to your mindset, and your mindset actually now influences how you behave. And it is so interesting, I like researching, and I was trying to get what the Bible says about sexuality. And did you know that God created us for sex? And there's so many verses in the Bible that they refer to our body organs, they refer to love one to another. It is so interesting, guys, and I'm going to be expounding about this. And allow me to start with this verse, Songs of Songs, chapter 7, 16 to 14. Well, if you read through, my emphasis will come towards the end, and that is 13 and 14, where it says, "Come, my beloved, let us go into the fields and lie all night among the flowering henna. Let us go early to the vineyards. There I will give you my love." And I just want to underline vineyard, because as you head towards the New Testament, actually in the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the vine. He says, "I am the vine." So when it comes to the biblical reference, I believe the equation that God has for us is man and woman of course, under operating under the authority of Christ. And that, of course, forms the three in one kind of thing. And if you look at even God himself, we know him as God the Father, there's God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, three. So the equation of God is that, he comes to unify any relationship. All right, he is that stronghold, that glue that holds a man and a woman together. And of course, as I always say in this channel, I do not discriminate religion. Personally, I speak from a point of being a Christian. So if you're out there and you're a Muslim, you're a Catholic, you're an Orthodox, whatever religion you are, we all have a God. So you will relate this according to your religion. All right. So as I said, man and woman come together. Initially, God says a man and woman will come, they will join, and they'll become one. All right. But when he is involved in that marriage, he literally binds you together with his word, because when you're operating under the Spirit and the word of God, you're assured of eternity wherever you are placed. All right. Songs of Solomon, and these are notes that I really picked out, from the word of God in that Songs of Songs. It is a delightful, let me just put this the way I have put it from my notes. It is delightfully erotic. It is a sensual dance between an unmarried man and woman. So it also brings in the teenage stage. We start saying at the age of 13, a teenager now goes backwards, and I'll explain this psychologically, but they go backwards to their sexuality and they reawaken it. And this is the time now they get attracted to the opposite sex. They suddenly notice that there's this boy that I love, and of course the hormones, the chemicals in the system support this process. All right. So when a young person falls in love, with a young man falls in love with a woman, it's extremely erotic. Oh, I can go back to my days, guys. I am not very young. Yes, I'm not very young, but going backwards into when I was young, it was also different, because every system, everything in you supports this erotic experience. So the Songs of Songs is, it's between basically an unmarried man and woman, and they're just trying to lure each other. And nothing is a spiritual coincidence. The fact that this is in the Bible, it's meant to motivate us and to know that God is with us even in these intimate journeys. No one wakes up asking for sex. No one wakes up, getting attracted to someone else. This is done by God. This is an innate kind of process. One day you wake up and you realize, I have, when someone touches me, there's a way I feel. All right. And I always encourage parents who are dealing with teens, in as much as sometimes they fall victims of early sexual behavior, it is for you to bring them back and explain to them why it is not proper to engage in sexual activity at an early stage. When you reprimand a child, when you become too harsh when dealing with, sexuality, there's a way a child is, as a reaction to your words, to your, to your, what would I say, to your harshness, that can, switch off and switch off for life. Now, I just want to give you reflective questions, or to drop out some points that I feel that we need to reflect on when it comes to the Bible and what it says about human sexuality. And the first thing is, why did God create Adam and Eve? Initially, Adam was alone, and God himself said, it is not good for man to be alone. And from Adam's rib, he created a woman. And then he said, this is good. All right. He put them in the Garden of Eden, and this was specifically for worship. He had provided the conditions that they needed to thrive in that garden. But of course, we know how the story turned out. But my point, guys, exactly is, in the beginning, God created man and women. And one thing that I really like to say, who we are in terms of gender, we are the image of God. So I am a female version of God, and if you're a male out there, you're a male version of God. And when you think about it, it should make you stand in awe of who God is and how powerful he is. Because if each of us carry an element of him, you can imagine why we call him mighty God. The second thing is, why did the animals go in 2 by 2 when they were going into the ark? All right. Could it be that if God did not want, procreation to happen, could it be that, if God didn't really, have this vision of, granting us this, this very pleasurable thing called, we call, human sexuality, that maybe some animals will just be one. All right. So that is a reflective point for you, just by the fact that, the animals went in two by two already says something about God's mind. And then I just quickly want to say that why did God say in at the beginning, be fruitful and multiply? That already expresses God's mind. And how are we meant to multiply? You know it. You know it. So what I'm just trying to say, guys, is, at the very first point, spiritually, we have authority as human beings to engage in sexuality. The only thing is, and the only problem that I normally have is why we do it, with who we are doing it, and when we do it. But otherwise, this is strictly ordained by God. And I just want to quickly refer to, some of the comments, of attractiveness and character, in people that were brought out in the Bible. And you can quickly just, Google and check this out for yourself. Rebecca was referred as fair when looked upon. Rachel was referred as graceful. Joseph was referred as well built and very good looking. All right. So this thing started way back. All right. And in fact, let me just put this in Genesis 29:20. We have the first, what we call, like, love at first sight. And this happened between Jacob and Rachel. Did you know that? It was first, love at first sight, because it says in Genesis 29:20, it seemed to him a few days because of the love he had for her. All right. Then the fourth thing is the Bible refers to beauty of lovers and each of their bodies exalted. And one of the things, like in my African, like having been born and bred in the African culture, is we tend to shy away from reality, from our body organs. We tend to have a level of shame and want to, of course, in the context of young children, then it is not allowed. But I feel that one to another in the in that context of a relationship, we should refer to each other, with such words, right? Songs of Songs 4-5. I just think Songs of Songs is just the ultimate when it comes to, human beings expressing their sexuality. It says, how fair and pleasant you are, a loved one, delectable maiden. You're as stately as a palm tree, and your breasts are like its cluster. And Proverbs 5:18-19 says, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. May her breasts satisfy you at all times. May you be intoxicated by your love. All right. So the Bible is giving us, go ahead, guys. This is God's mindset. This is, he wants us to enjoy. And when we get into the psychological theories that talk about, human sexuality, you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at how organs play a critical role in developing our mindsets. My other point is the Bible sends us a very strong message of how sex should give us pleasure, and actually it is good. It is good. It is not a bad thing. If you do it at the right time with the right person, it is good. It should motivate you, and we will see this when we move now to the mindset, to the psychological theories, and just helping us to understand now from a human science perspective what some of these things do to us. And Sarah was described as having sexual pleasure at a very old age. A lot of us, as we grow older, we tend to say these things are for young people. I personally don't believe in that. I believe that when God blesses you with a partner, that you should enjoy everything holistically. But I know sometimes the environment changes, such as that one person is sick, or probably there's change in terms of one person is transferred to a different place to work, so there's distance and all that. But ideally, nothing should limit you from enjoying this thing that God has given us. And Isaac is said to have been noticed fondling his wife Rebecca. It is actually in the Bible. All right. And another thing, Leah and Rachel, used to negotiate. There were coys who would get to sleep with Jacob. Can you imagine? On which night? So if you're out there and you have no feelings whatsoever, you will need some level of intervention, especially if you're of age and you are a relationship. This human sexuality should be a regular practice. You know, I must say that it really does bother me when people come in for counseling and they'll tell you, I've done 4 months, I've done 6 months. Really? Guys, this should, if you're eating daily to sustain your physical, then even spiritually and psychologically, when it comes to human sexuality, you should also have your dose. Yeah, there's something called malnutrition. It happens, it spreads across all boards. So when someone does not eat and their physical health is depleted, if you're of age and you also don't get some level of intimacy where you're in a relationship with someone, it will affect you in one or the other. Please continue watching. I'm going to be explaining this. So if this is your first time watching this channel, if you're new to this channel, subscribe if you want to, get future notifications, on anything to do with the mindset. All right. And lastly, Potiphar's wife was strongly seen to desire Joseph. That last. So all these things should make you realize that truly we are designed to enjoy sex. All right. Now, I have talked a lot about the spirituality. Now, let us get into human science. This is the most interesting space. In fact, when I was a young student in psychology and we were doing my diploma studies, I was very perplexed by the fact that our early childhood actually does interfere with why we are today, who we are today, and this comes from various stages that we went through since we were born. So there's this psychological theories called Freud, and he came up with something called psychoanalytic theory, and you could Google it and read it more, just to understand for yourself. And Freud sort of like wanted to make us understand that right from the time of birth, there are organs in our body that become a point of sensual contact at the point where a child is born. And you'll realize as I explain this, these are the same organs that give us that pleasure in our old stage. So at the point where a child is born, the connection between that child and their mother is through breastfeeding. All right. So by that time, 0 to about 1.5 years, this child's source of pleasure is the breast. Can you imagine? And that's just that, that connection where that child is suckling has an effect such that if this child does not connect, if this child does not breastfeed, it will actually interfere with how they view life, with how they interact with people, with how they behave later on when they are fully developed as mature people. All right. Now, one of the things that a mouth will do, it will take in food, it will spit out, it will bite, it can hold on to something. Of course, when you close and bite something, food in your mouth, it will hold on to that food, and it can close, to just retain that thing. So now let me just relate this with our own lives and behaviors. Did you know that when your mouth, the children who are being fed and they would take in a lot, like I hate to use this word, but they were a bit greedy. When they grow in life, they love to receive things. Did you know that? As we delve into the psychological theories. So remember, guys, this is a theory, okay? And as I always say, you take what you want to believe in, you leave what you feel is out of place. But this is just theory. As we talk about, the mouth, the function that it plays. So there's those who take in, they're those who spit, and the people who spit, Freud used to say they're generous people. They end up becoming generous people. All right. There's a correlation between spitting and being generous in life. The other thing is biting. Guys who love to bite are said to be quarrelsome in behavior. All right. So if you're married to someone who just loves conflict, every other day it's noise in the house, violence, maybe during this stage when they were breastfeeding, they used to bite their mother a lot. It's a naughty behavior. I've experienced it with some of my children, but it does tell a lot. Everything in life is not a coincidence, guys. I don't believe in that, I don't believe in coincidence. There's something always to read, something always to learn, from every experience that we go through. Now, there are those who hold on, and they're said to be guys who just get fixated in certain spaces. You're maybe in a narcissistic relationship, and if you're watching me for the first time, check out my video on narcissism, all right? And despite all these harsh conditions in your relationship, despite psychological abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, you are still there. What are you waiting for? This is the reason why we find couples waking up one day and just killing each other, all right? So it's very important to understand yourself. Maybe you need to go back on the drawing board and try to really have a reflection of what or who you are when you're a child. There's some things, guys, we cannot remember. There's a certain level of memory that I think for me I lost, when it comes to childhood. But the little that you can be able to dig out from your, unconscious mind can really help you understand why you behave the way you do. And the fifth one is the mouth that closes. Those are people who just love having boundaries. They're the guys who just tell you, I think you're just getting into my space, I just don't like it, I'm a private person, and all that. So you get to understand, like, during this stage. And if you go back and even ask their parents, they will tell you, this one used to bite me a lot. This one was just, always breastfeeding so much, And if you equate their character, with what their moms say about them, it is just so interesting. Okay, by the time someone comes up with a theory, it is something that they have done research on, has been proven to be workable. There's been research, there's collection of data. So I don't believe Freud was just sitting down and coming up with lies. This is actually true, and this actually helps us. It gives us a framework whenever we are doing sessions and trying to help clients who are dealing with personality disorders. It really gives us insight into their head space. All right, now the second stage is the anal stage, 1.5 to 3 years. Okay, 1.5 to 3 years. You notice I've said it is the anal stage. So the source of pleasure now moves from the breast to the anus. Okay, and what is the function of the anus? It is to eliminate waste, and before it eliminates, it retains it. There's retention before elimination. All right, so those two functions are very key. And Freud was saying that those people who used to retain, that those kids who will want to use the potty, and they'll also feel a little bit ashamed, so they'll be like, eventually maybe they'll end up doing this act on themselves, and when they're asked, they're like, oh, I was scared, I couldn't, so many excuses. So that level of retention brings in a new character in this child, someone who's going to be a hoarder, a keeper, very stingy. All right, why? Right from childhood, they would hold thing. Remember, this one actually just brings out that thing of being so stingy. Have you ever sat down with your partner and you're telling them we need to buy new furniture, and they're like, what? Are we going to buy new furniture, or should we buy land? They're very, very stingy. Now, the other thing is elimination. Now, when I talk about elimination, these are guys who are very quick. You don't wait. Unlike someone who's on the road, I mean, they're driving and they need to use the small room, and they're like, you know what, I can hold on. Those are people who like to retain stuff, But people who have this elimination habit, they don't wait. Because first of all, they're aware that, did you know that holding, urine in your system can actually give you infection? So these are guys who are actually aware and they like comfort. So we also say that part of this, being very quick to eliminate shows a trait of being a giver in life. All right, so when you have a child, if you look at your child growing and you're able to pick some of these traits, and to the parents who are watching me, just be a little bit observant about your children. You realize, actually, based on what I'm talking about, there are certain traits that come out very, very strongly later in life, and you can thank me by subscribing to my channel. All right, now when we're talking about the anal stage, we know that, of course, when we go for our long call, we have to clean up. All right, even the short call requires that we clean up, guys, and I hope you really do. All right, of course, for hygienic purposes. Yeah, so there are those guys who are never serious. They will just go do their thing. Some of them will say, I'm a man, so I don't need this. And there's always this mentality about life and things. We are all, as I say, we have been brought up differently, in terms of even the people who brought us up, who are our helps or our parents. So there are those guys who you'll find, after, going to the loo, they have their wipes. They're so, specific. They're so hygienic. They're so, very conscious of their cleanliness, their health, when it comes to, their anus and all that. So they really make sure that they are clean. That those will just take a tissue, a small tissue, because they're economists, and, da da da, and they're done. They don't care if there's anything left there. So this aspect also brings about the issue of perfectionism and organization. Guys who really clean up well after themselves are said to have this perfection kind of behavior, all right? And the opposite is also true, all right? Then now we've talked about the anal stage, we've talked about the oral stage. The next one we call it, or rather Freud himself called it, the phallic stage. And phallic stage is also known as the libido stage. At the age between 3 and 6, children discover their sexual organs. And most of the time you'll find that, where there are young kids, there's some who you will even see fondling themselves, the young boys playing with their pennies, or even fondling each other. Is this natural? Yes, it is. I said it. No one wakes up and begins to have a certain feeling, when it comes to the sexual bit of a human being. These things, there's a way God has created us, and we develop from one stage to another. If you're a parent to a child between that age, 3 to 6, please do not reprimand a child. Correct them with love. Explain to them why it is not good to do some of these things. Otherwise, if you slap your child and you're very harsh on them, it may make them go into fear. And you know what happens? This is stored in their conscious mind. All right? It goes down, to the unconscious mind. So later on in life, you will find a young girl who was beaten thoroughly by the mother because probably she was found touching herself. So what happens is, at that point where she's in a relationship as a grown adult, the moment a man touches her, she reacts. Based on the fact that the mother was harsh, the mother made her feel that this is wrong. So guys, we need to be very, very careful also how we handle our kids. And this information I'm giving you out for free, so that we can create the kind of social space in our families, in our churches, in the society that we want. Knowledge is power. And I believe by empowering you, I'll be empowering your children as well. Something very interesting about this libido stage is a young boy, will suffer from what we call Oedipus complex, and a young girl will suffer from Electra complex. Allow me to explain. Now, boys fall in love with their mothers, and that is why boys will always protect their mothers. If you look at most young men, when they grow up, they will always take extra care of their parents, and in particular, their mothers, all right? Why does this happen? When they're at this stage between 3 and 6, they literally fall in love with their mothers. So they start competing with their fathers for attention and love from their mothers. And then at some point, they realize that the father has the ability, there's a fear that creeps in, that the father is strong and he has an ability to castrate them. So what do? They now side with the father. And that siding now becomes a sort of like a regulation, whereby now they go back to where they are supposed to be. This is your mother. You're not supposed to fall in love with them. And this was actually, this name came up from a Greek story where a young man, called Oedipus actually fell in love with the mother. And he actually ended up killing, the father because of falling in love with the mom. All right. And then we go into the young girl. Now, the young girl competes with the mother for love and attention from the father. All right. And personally, I have seen it with my daughters, whereby everything is dad. At a certain stage you realize the attention is more drawn to their fathers. It's because at that point the father is like their boyfriend. They have fallen in love, but then they realize, my God, I am actually operating in this house, and this woman is actually married to my dad. So they sort of like regulate and now come back to themselves. All right, this is supposed to happen, and if they don't regulate, you will find that later on in life they have sexual dysfunctions. This is one of the reasons that causes young men, young women to have sexual dysfunctionality. All right, now the next stage is the latency stage, which is between 6 years and puberty, which is basically from around 12 or 13, depending on your child, whether they are an early bloomer or whether they develop within the normal curve. Early bloomers actually don't follow the normal curve because they get everything at a very early stage. Now between this time, everything now else is put aside. The kids now they forget about the sexual gratification, fondling themselves and all that, and they quickly now get into a space whereby they socialize, they develop other skills, intellectual skills, social skills, and they just basically build the social system around them. And this is the time you realize, even when you look at the age of your child, they begin to have friends, they know who their friends are, and they love games, whether PS or whatever, they love these games, because they're building those skills that they'll need later in life. But then going on from puberty, let's say from around 13 to 18, because that is when puberty is considered to be at the peak. Now the sexual libido is reawakened, and now, unlike the other time where the kids were falling in love with their parents, now it is someone of the opposite sex. They're actually able to zero into someone, and that's why you hear them maybe within their two small circles, or fallen in love. Boys will express their love for young women and all that, and they'll be sending. In our age, we used to send each other letters. Of course, I'm from those ages, but nowadays, guys, I just, children of today are so bold, so bold. They will tell you stuff to your face. I've seen videos of children abusing each other. They're using sexual language, which means that some of our children are predisposed to sites that are not good for them. So if you're also watching me and you give your child access to their phones, because most of us have bought phones for our children, but we don't really monitor what they watch, you are creating a bomb in your house that will explode. Let me tell you, everything must have a time and season. When you predispose a child to content, sexual content, at an early stage, they lose every other thing and focus on this thing. Because remember now, their hormones are also, acting up. This is the time young men, produce testosterone. The young girls are also producing estrogen. There's a lot of physical changes. The girls will develop breasts. There's hair, under the armpits and all these things. I really don't want to go to them. We all went through school, and we know, for those of us, for most of us, because we're adults, we know what we went through. So alongside that, the hormones and the chemicals that are produced by our brains support sexuality. And that is why sometimes when you find young men, abusing drugs and alcohol, they end up in certain spaces that they do not desire. For example, making young girls pregnant, So the issue of early teenage pregnancies have become rampant. Last year in 2020, the statistics in Kenya, oh my God, it was something else. It was something else. And that is because of COVID. The fact that schools were on a break, you can imagine the kids just went wild. I think we were talking about 121,000, I'm not very sure, but it was such an alarming rate, So we really need, as you listen to me, kindly guide and guard your child. Okay, let them develop well, support them, talk to them about their sexuality. Don't make them rediscover on their own and ask their friends questions, because they'll be misguided. It is your role as a parent to sit down and talk to your child. All right, and of course, knowing that girls, as a woman personally, I talk to my girls in relation to their developmental stages, because I have been there. So it's easy for me to share experiences, and the father should do the same in case you have a son, So make sure that you try and mentor your children holistically. I love human science because it just takes us into the mindset of a human being. And when we talk about, such theories, that try to really take us back and explain why sometimes we as adults are hoarders. Some of us are, we are givers and all that. It just really amazes me. And we always talk about our human nature, and bringing into awareness our childhood experiences. But remember that this is based on feelings, it's based on timings, it's based on legality and triggers. When I talk about feelings, there are times, as I said earlier in my example, that a feeling will be evoked out of you, that takes you back to your childhood memories, such as someone touching you in a particular way, and it will trigger something from you. So those feelings become the entry point into your unconscious mind. All right, then the other thing is seasons. The way God has created us, we move from one season to another. All right, so there are those seasons whereby we go into those spaces where our childhood memories are evoked. Not that we want them, but maybe you're invited for a baby shower, and in that baby shower you meet a child who behaved the way you used to behave. So that already triggers you to go back into time and remember you. All right, another thing is also legality. And when I talk about legality issues, it's where maybe something has been done against the law, against the law. And I would maybe use this example, like someone who was raped, someone who was raped, and then eventually, because they never got what we call psychological first aid, they end up, I've noticed that people give out what is in them. And if you go through stuff in life and you never heal out of them, you never deal with those feelings, you end up doing these things to other people. Hurting people hurt others. So I have noticed that some of these things that people do to others is because those things are in them, and they are scars. They are scars. And when I talk about legality, it really revolves around so many things, issues such as rape and all that. And you find that even people who kill and all that, there's always something. If you dig into their background, there's something that distorted their behavior, such that their feelings are numbed and they don't really behave like normal human beings. There's a way they just they're hard-hearted. And of course, the other ones now is trigger. Trigger is what just that thing that makes you now go back into time. All right. And when I talk about memories in a human being, Freud came up with this theory. It's called, as I said, it's called psychoanalysis. And we have three compartments ideally in the head. All right. So there's the unconscious mind, there's the subconscious mind, and there's the conscious mind. Unconscious mind, as I said in my previous video, is where we store things that we don't want to remember. It contains our childhood experiences. There are those things, our pains and all that. We push them to the back of the mind. Then the subconscious mind, which is a quick referral for something that we need to pick. It's just a library of referral, something that we need to quickly remember. And then the conscious mind is what we are dealing with right now. Like, I know I am seated on this seat. That is the conscious mind at work. But it will take a trigger for me to remove information from the back of my mind, which is the unconscious mind, to bring it here. Case in point, when something happens to me that takes me back to my childhood memories, I'll quickly, that it's like a video, that thing just quickly pops up from the unconscious mind, and it is brought back to my conscious, where now I'm able to deal with it. Now, something that I need to mention is there are a lot of things that we go through. There are a lot of undesirable, fetishes, that we have. We are human beings and we are weak. So most of these things, our fears and all that, are normally stored in the unconscious mind. All right, and that is why therapy really makes sense. Because it helps you undo the unconscious mind. Then you're able to compartmentalize and treat what is scarring you, remove what is not beneficial to you, and keep that which can grow you.